All right, hang on a second. I'll be right back. Okay, let's see. It's 7 o'clock, and supposedly I'm going live. I I say supposedly because there have been some internet backbone issues that have impacted me. So I'm trying to double check to see if the live streams are actually up. Anyway, this is Paul Engel, the Constitution Study. This is where we read and study the Constitution. It's where we teach a rising generation to be free. I'm glad for everybody who can join me, whether you're joining me on the Zoom room, on YouTube, on hopefully on the website, or any of the other platforms. Where you will not be finding me this evening is Facebook. So if you're watching this on Facebook, it's obviously recording because I am in Facebook jail. That's right. Facebook has blocked me for 30 days. They won't exactly tell me why. All they've said is that because of some page my account's been associated with has violated some policy that they have yet to identify, with some posts that they haven't pointed out. I am in jail for 30 days. And when you click the link that says, if you think this is an error, and you try to ask them why, they say, we're sorry, we cannot process your request at this time. So Facebook has now earned its title. That's what I'm going to call it from now on. It is fake book. And let's face it, anybody who is actually depending on Facebook to get their news and information, you're being lied to. You're being lied either by commission or by omission, whichever is the case. You are being lied to, and you know what? Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Fool me 10,000 times, I'm probably an American voter. Although, based on some of the other news I've seen lately, I may just be a person in the world. With all that said, I am glad if you actually have joined me. Thank you very, very much. If you've been impacted with some of the internet issues, I know some people have, some people haven't. I hope you are fighting through. I hope you're able to find me. If you followed me on Facebook, please head over to one of the other services. Head right to the website, constitutionstudy.com. Head to Parler or Rumble. I'm still up on YouTube. Twitter hasn't killed me yet. Find other ways, because we can't trust one source of information. It just doesn't work. So what else has been going on? Oh, by the way, if you found this, hey, do me a favor, share this content. I've asked everybody who knows me, if you see someone commenting on something on Facebook, please let them know I'm in jail. But if you find this information, feel free, post it to Facebook, share it to Facebook, let people know there is still actually information out there. You can find it. Please help me do that. I want to talk today about a couple things. I'm going to leave. I plan on leaving a fair amount of time at the end to answer questions. So I'm expecting to get a lot of them, but we are still in the middle of a presidential election. I know we all hoped it'd be over last Tuesday, but it's not. So please be aware, we are still in the middle, and there's been a lot of interesting things going on. I actually got interviewed twice so far this week, people that are asking questions about, what's going to happen, what can happen, what does the Constitution say, all that stuff. But today, I mean, I've talked about that. I've done webinars about that. I've talked about it. Here's what I want to do today. See, it's one thing to point out that there is a problem. And I think most of us know there is a problem. I get a lot of people complaining about a lot of different things. including the Electoral College. So my question for today is, how do we fix the choosing of electors? And if we have this problem, what can we do to make things better instead of just going out and yelling at the wind? So let's talk a little bit about the process, about what's actually happening, where we stand, and let's talk about how we can maybe fix this before the next time rolls around or at some point in the future. So for everyone who hasn't figured this out yet, the people do not elect the president directly. They don't. If you looked at your ballot, if you looked at it closely, in small print, most likely it said that you were voting for electors for. I don't care if you voted for Trump, Biden, Joe Jorgensen, or the green cheese goddess. I don't care. You are voting for electors, for people who would cast that vote. Why is that important? Well, again, I go into this in a lot more detail in other places, but the answer is the president doesn't work for the people. He works for the states. His job, or eventually her job, is to represent the states in the union, primarily in foreign affairs. Yes, he or she has the power to nominate and to appoint. They do so not on their own, with advice and consent of the Senate. So there's a lot going on there. There's a lot more to that. But we don't directly elect the president. So the process goes like this. On last Tuesday, on election day, people voted to choose electors because that is how the state legislatures have decided to appoint electors. Hang on a second, we get a glass of water. Keep hydrated here. All right, so the fact that you voted for electors has nothing to do with the Constitution. There is no requirement that the people vote for electors. There's not even a mention of the people voting for electors in the Constitution. That is a function that your state legislature has picked up. Now, once the election happened, the states are to appoint electors. They're actually supposed to do it on election day. The Tuesday after the first Monday in November, election day, they were supposed to appoint a slate of electors. Now they still have time to work out problems, right? There are recounts going on. There are legal challenges going on. There are, in some cases, I don't know, I'm assuming all the counting is done. I don't know. I can't keep track of the nonsense. That's only been made worse by the federal court system, but that's where it is. So there's counting going on. Now, the next big important date is actually, I believe, December 8th. You see, the electors actually vote on December 14th. That's the actual election for president. It is actually the only national election we have in this country. All those other elections are state elections. So on December 14th, the electors gather in their state. A lot of people say they gather in Washington. No, they gather in their state to cast their ballots for president and then send that information off to Washington. There is a federal law. The Constitution gives Congress the authority to set the date for when the electors are appointed, and when they actually vote. They have said you have to have your stuff together 6 days before the vote. The state has until 6 days before December 14th, I believe that's right, to finally appoint a slate of electors, appoint people to actually vote for president. So all of this nonsense about Biden being president-elect is just that. It's nonsense. There is no president-elect yet because there's been no vote for president, unless you listen to mainstream media, universities, or people who couldn't read the Constitution if it was handed to them in Braille. There has been no vote for president. It's been a vote for electors, December 14th. Now, on December 14th, each state, probably in their capital, their electors are going to get together. They're going to cast their votes. Because we've made such a mess of this, they're doing it all on party lines. So that's why we have the donkeys champion, the elephants champion, Yeah, we got the Libertarian Party champion. I don't know what their symbol is, but the vast majority of people are going to focus on the two primary parties, and they're going to pick either an elephant or a donkey, and their champion is who these people are going to vote for. They've promised to vote for them. They've pledged to vote for them. Most of them are going to vote for them. But here's the interesting thing. Nothing in the Constitution dictates how the electors decide who to vote for. The fact that they are pledged to vote for a candidate is based on state law, not federal law. And what's interesting is I believe only 12 states actually have criminal penalties for what's termed a faithless elector. So it is quite possible that all of these electors that have promised to vote for one candidate or the other may not. They may look at the nonsense, the mess going on in their state and say, I don't have a mandate on who to vote for because I don't know who won yet. I'm the Secretary of State is certified that I've been appointed as an elector pledged to vote for either Biden or Trump. But look at what's been going on. There may still actually be legal challenges in place. In fact, it would not be inconceivable that there may be states where 6 days before the election, there's still a legal battle going on, and those electors haven't been appointed. And if they're not appointed in time to actually vote, that has a very interesting consequence as you get farther down the road. So December 14th, they vote. They, everybody gets a piece of paper. They write down the name of who they vote for president. They write down another name for vice president. And yeah, they promise to do both of the same party, but they count them all up. They sign it, they seal it, they send it to Washington. They send it to Congress, addressed to the president of the Senate, who, by the way, that's right, they're the vice president of the United States. Notice right now it is Trump. I'm sorry, it's Pence. Trump's the president, Pence the vice. It's been a long day. I'm sorry. Now, the next big date that comes important is January 3rd. January 3rd, the new Congress gets sworn in. That becomes important if there is no clear winner for president or vice president. So January 3rd, the new Congress gets sworn in. January 6th, that Congress sits in their offices in the I think it's the House meeting room, and the president of the Senate gets up and he goes through each state's certificate of votes counts alphabetically, right? A, B, C, D. He opens it. He reads the name and the vote count, the name and the vote count, the name and the vote count. There are 6 or 8 people that have been picked. They write down the name and the vote count, and then they add all these votes up. And then we have a president-elect, hopefully. In other words, if whoever gets the most votes for president, that is a majority. In other words, whoever gets 50% plus 1 of the appointed electors is then considered the president-elect. Not until then do we have a president-elect. Why is that important? Well, there's a total of 538 electors. Remember, each state gets the number of electors based on the representation in Congress and in the House of Representatives, in the Senate, plus we have 3 more for Washington, D.C. So you have 435 members of the House, you have 100 members in the Senate, that's 535. You get 3 more for D.C., that's 538. Half of 538 is 269. Since you need a majority, the magic number is 270. But remember, I said, what happens if a state can't actually appoint their electors? See, not all the electors have been appointed yet. What if they don't actually appoint their electors? Well, there is a backstop. Remember, the vote has only because the state legislature said, that's how we're going to decide who to appoint for electors, is we're going to let the people vote. But there's a backstop. If the vote goes bad, if they look at it and say, we can't trust this vote, we don't know what the vote means, we're not sure this vote's anywhere near accurate, the state legislature can actually appoint electors directly. But what if they don't? What if between the election problems and legal challenges, we get to December 14th and any one state that has not appointed its electors yet? Well, then electors aren't appointed. They don't count. So let's take a state. I believe Pennsylvania has 20 electors in the Electoral College. So let's take Pennsylvania because Philadelphia is having all sorts of issues. Let's take Pennsylvania. Let's say for some reason, lawsuits, whatever, Pennsylvania does not appoint their electors in time to actually vote. Well, that 538 number changes because 538 electors weren't appointed. Only 518 electors were appointed, which means half of 518 is not 269, it's 259, which means the magic number becomes 260. So there's still a lot going on here. Now, whether you're a Biden fan or a Trump fan, there's still a lot going on here. And the biggest problem we have is most people, since they don't know the Constitution, they are led astray by people who claim to know what they're talking about. Most of them don't. So hopefully on January 6th, we have a president-elect. One of the two, either Trump or Biden, will have received a majority of the votes from the electors appointed. What happens if that doesn't happen? What if it's a tie? What if it's 269 to 269? That's actually possible. That's numerically possible based on the outstanding delegates, the outstanding ballots being counted. Or what happens if a delegate, if an elector decides, I can't vote? It's happened in the past. They look at the mess of the election and says, I don't have a mandate of who to vote for. I don't have that because there's no proof here. I'm going to abstain. Now it gets even crazier. If a presidential candidate does not get the majority of the electors appointed, well, then the selection of president goes to the House of Representatives and the selection of vice president goes to the Senate. But there's a twist. When the House of Representatives votes for president, it is not based on members. Each state delegation gets one vote. So California, which has 53 seats in the House, only gets one vote. North Dakota, which has one seat in the House, gets one vote. Now, before the election, the Republicans controlled a majority of the state delegations in the House of Representatives. I don't know what that number is for the next Congress. That's why it's important to understand the Congress will be sworn in before this count happens. So that's that mess down the road. And I wanted to describe all that because I get a lot of questions, but I want to kind of recycle back and come to this. And by the way, I want to remind everybody, if you have questions, please put them in the comments. I know I'm talking about a bunch of different things and there's all sorts of odd permutations and whatnot, but I will be sure to have time to answer questions at the end. But here's the question. A lot of people complain about the Electoral College, and when I ask them what the problem they have with, the vast majority has nothing to do with the quote unquote Electoral College or even with the Constitution. It has to do with their state's law. Right now, as I said, Article 2, Clause 2 says each state gets a number of electors. Each state legislature appoints a number of electors based on their representative in the House and the Senate. It is the state legislatures that decide how those electors get appointed. So let me take a look here. Let me go over here and let me point out a couple things. I want to take a couple quotes from Federalist Paper number 68, our friend Alexander Hamilton, because he talked a lot about this, and I want to explain a little bit as we go through. So let me start sharing. Share, put up my, And everybody now should be seeing a quote with the wonderful visage of Alexander Hamilton. Okay. Get you out of the way. Now, again, Federal 68, they were talking about the presidential elections. And Mr. Hamilton brings out a very interesting point that was part of the discussion. He said, it was equally desirable that the immediate election should be made, again, he's talking about the election for president, that the immediate election should be made by men most capable of analyzing the qualities adapted to the situation, adapted to the station, and acting under circumstances favorable to deliberation and to a judicious combination of all the reasons and documents which were proper to govern their choice. A small number of persons selected by their fellow citizens from the general mass will be most likely to possess the information and discernment requisite to such complicated investigations. See, when they were debating how to elect the president in the Continental Congress, when they were drafting the Constitution, they looked at it, and there were some people that said, "Well, let the House of Representatives select them. The people elect House members. We'll let the House select the president." And they kind of said, "Well, the only problem is then the president becomes dependent on the House. How's the executive going to be a check on the legislative if he works for one of the houses of the legislators? That's not going to work." Then they came up with a system of electors, and they had a couple different variations. And the biggest question was, how are those electors going to be chosen? And there were a couple of different competing plans. Now, one, which was favored by Hamilton and by James Madison, I'll talk about in a minute, but another involved a more direct vote, and or I should say a more legislative controlled vote. And the problem is they couldn't come to a solution. So what they ended up doing is coming to a compromise. They said, listen, if we can't figure it out here to put it in the Constitution, we'll let the state legislatures do it. However, our recommended method of doing that would be what we're going to talk about in a minute. By the way, that's not a winner take all. But notice, you do not have people voting for candidates. It says the people vote for a fellow citizen with the skills, with the information necessary to make the choice for president. In other words, you would not be voting for Donald Trump or Joe Biden. You'd be voting for a neighbor, someone who lived near you, someone who you trusted to make the decision. Why? Because they wanted them to be set aside and to deliberate. The president was not supposed to be a national candidate. They didn't want the president out on the stump. They wanted a group of people to deliberate without the messy distractions of campaign promises and other influences, right? So you were supposed to vote for a neighbor, and that neighbor would then decide, okay, here's where we're going. Now, from the very first, there were electors who pledged to vote for a specific candidate. That's nothing new. But it wasn't until research was correct about 1860s that we started seeing a general vote for electors based on a vote from a vote of the people for that was directed to a pledged candidate. That was a little strange. It wasn't, until the 1860s, actually, most of the states' legislature actually appointed the electors. Now, an elector can't be a member of the House or Senate, right? But the state legislature, I live in Tennessee, so Nashville would have chosen, the legislature in Nashville would have chosen the electors for president. That has changed. About the 1860s, we went from predominantly legislative to predominantly vote-based appointment or decision on appointment for these electors. But the role of the elector, again, has changed. They were expected to deliberate. They were expected to exercise a certain amount of free will in the decision, not the legally pledged electors that we have today. Now, Alexander Hamilton goes on. The process of election affords a moral certainty that the office of president will never fail to the lot of any man who is not in eminent degree endowed with requisite qualifications. Talents for low intrigue and the little arts of popularity may alone suffice to elevate a man to the first honors in a single state, but it will require other talents and a different kind of merit to establish him in the esteem and confidence of the whole Union, or of so considerable a portion of it as would be necessary to make him a successful candidate for the distinguished office of President of the United States. This is the most common argument about why we have an electoral college. They didn't want someone who could be popular in a state or two. They wanted as much of the Union involved. They wanted as much of the Union supporting the office as possible. That's why we have this electoral college. But what we have today is an interesting twist. See, one of the complaints about the electoral college is now the decision for president, the elections decided by a few swing states. Right now you have Florida, Michigan, Pennsylvania, a couple of others. These few states are really where the decision is made because, well, the rest of the states are pretty much, if you're in California or New York, they're going to vote for the Democrat. If you're in Texas or Tennessee, you pretty much know they're going to vote for the Republican. But that's, again, because the political parties have so manipulated the election process in the states that they now have a process to protect those things. The state of California is a Democratic state from a presidential standpoint because it's a winner-take-all state, and as long as the majority of the people are vote Democratic, all of California's delegates, all of their electors will go for the Democratic candidate, which brings up an interesting question. Come on, here you go. All of these advantages will happily be combined in the plan devised by the convention, which is that the people of each state shall choose a number of persons as electors equal to the number of senators and representatives of such state in the national government, who shall assemble within the state and vote for some fit person as president. Alexander says, if we want a president that's supported by a majority of the Union, here's the process. But here's what's different. See, there's an interesting letter that James Madison sent to Mr. Hay in 1823, where he went into a little more detail about the thought process behind many in Congress when they wrote this. And he recognizes that there's a reason why they ended up with this compromise. He says, I agree entirely with you in the thinking that the election of presidential electors by district is an amendment very proper to be brought forward at the same time with the relating to the eventual choice of president by the House of Representatives. The district mode was mostly, if not exclusively, in view when the Constitution was framed and adopted, and was exchanged for the general ticket in the legislative election as the only expedient for baffling the policies of particular states which had set the example. All right, let's stop that sharing and let you talk to me for a minute. So here's the deal. The original plan of the majority of the people in the Constitutional Convention was that electors would not be chosen on a state-by-state basis. They would be elected on a district-by-district basis. Now, I know I have one watcher in New York. I'm in Tennessee. We all have pretty much every state has an urban-rural divide. Urban counties tend to vote Democratic. Rural counties tend to vote Republican. Now, when I lived in New York State, guess what? I lived in upstate. I lived in a much more Republican area. We had Republican state senator, Republican state assemblyman. We had a Republican member of the House of Representatives. The only places we did not have a Republican was in the U.S. Senate and in our vote for president, the electors for president, because a majority of the people lived in the big cities or in the university cities. So in New York, you had obviously New York City with a very large, very dense population, but you also had cities like Albany, Rochester, and Buffalo with large universities and they also tended to vote much more Democratic. So if you were a Republican in the state of New York, you didn't stand a snowball's chance of having a Republican elector appointed to vote for president. A lot of people I know didn't even bother voting because they knew if they were a Republican, their vote really didn't matter. Now, I live in Tennessee. Tennessee tends to vote Republican. Now, I know people in Nashville. In fact, I was in a meeting several months ago. They were complaining because the county they live in Nashville is heavily Democratic, but they can't get a Democratic presidential elector because the state issues a winner take all. In fact, there are only two states, I think it's Maine, and I'm not sure what the other one is. There are only two states in the union that do not appoint their electors in a winner take all fashion. I'm just checking for messages, see if anybody's asked a question yet. Okay. Now, here's my proposal. If we want to end up with I don't want to use the word fair because it's so often misused. If we want a more just appointment of electors, if we want a system that is closer to what the majority of the founding fathers wanted, if we want a system that gives the people in the state as much voice as possible in the selection of electors, and we want to hold to this, we don't want to simply go to a national popular vote because that would destroy the republic. Here's what I recommend. My proposal is this. It's very simple. And in fact, I probably ought to write this up and post on the website so that you can take it, send it to your state representatives, send it to your state senators as a proposal so that they change how they appoint electors. It's very simple. Each U.S. congressional district will elect one presidential elector based on a vote of the people in that congressional district. Paragraph 1. Paragraph 2. The remaining two presidential electors will be selected based on the popular vote of the state as a whole. Now, what does that mean? Well, that means here in Tennessee, my county, my congressional district is very much Republican. So we would have a Republican presidential elector. However, parts of Nashville, Knoxville, Memphis, where they are much more Democratic, they'd have a Democratic presidential elector. And the remaining two in Tennessee would most likely be Republican because the majority of the people in Tennessee are Republican. Now take New York, which I'm also familiar with, it would be the opposite, right? When the county I lived in, the congressional district I lived in upstate New York, elected a Republican. They tend to vote Republican. So you'd actually have New York State sending Republican or having Republican presidential electors and Democrat presidential electors. But in New York, whereas New York City, Albany, Rochester, Buffalo, they would probably have the Democratic. In New York, the remaining two would probably be Democratic because of the overall population distribution. This was, go back, remember what Mr. Madison said. This was the original plan by congressional district. Now, stop for a second and picture in your mind either the 2016 or the 2020 election distribution by county or by congressional district. If you can find it by congressional district, see how they're spread out. This would probably give us, again, I don't want to say fair. I think to me that's a more just system of determining presidential electors, but it's also one I doubt will happen unless the people rise up and demand it for one very simple reason. The politicians in our state houses don't want to give up control. In Tennessee, they're not going to want to give up winner take all because it's controlled predominantly by the Republicans, and they don't want to give up the Electoral College votes. The same in New York or California or Florida or Philadelphia or Pennsylvania. It's a political power play. We have this for political reasons, not for constitutional reasons. So if there's one fix I think we should make to how we select presidential electors, besides the fact that we should pay much more attention to how the election process happens in our counties and maybe hold them a bit more accountable, the one thing I'd like to see to fix presidential electors is have each state appoint electors on a congressional district level. That is not something that's done in the Constitution. That's not something done by federal law. That's something that's done in each individual state house, which means it's something you actually have more influence in than if you were trying to get it done at the federal level. So I've been chatting for a while. Does anybody have any questions? Again, you can ask questions either about my position on presidential electors. You can ask questions about anything if you want to. I've got about, 25 minutes before the top of the hour. I'll stay a little longer if there are questions. But if you have questions, this is a great time to ask them. You can even ask me about my Facebook jail if you want to, although I don't really have any answers for it. Nobody has any questions. I know I'm missing a lot, right? Because usually I get several people from Facebook, and Facebook people that they can't join. I mean, I got a couple people watching on YouTube. I have somebody watching direct through Zoom, but I know I've lost a lot of my audience because Facebook doesn't want me. So I'll give you a few more minutes. See if you can come up with any question at all. I'll answer anything I can. I'm not seeing a lot out there. While they're doing it, let me tell you a little bit, a couple other things. I'll give you some chance to ask some questions, but I have a couple things I'm going to ask and let you know about what you're going to ask. I've recently started working with the Institute on the Constitution. Now, in many ways, both the IOTC and the Constitution Study, we're trying to do a lot of the same thing. We want to educate people at a grassroots level about the Constitution. I've done it more with books and videos. They've kind of done more where they've got classes that they do. So if you're interested in it, if you want to check it out, they actually have a free class they're going to be putting on. It's absolutely free. Go to constitutionstudy.com/IOTC free class. You can also find it just on the main page, and you can register. And it's a completely free class. It's a 12-week class. It's like 20 minutes of lecture. There's some quizzes and stuff like that, but it's a very nice class to get started, kind of get your feet wet, get a basic understanding of the Constitution. If you go through my link, they recognize you as coming from the Constitution Study, right? You can also possibly join the Institute on the Constitution Study. They also have a membership program. So their membership program is $10 a month. You get access to a bunch of their digital products and other features. You can check that out. Again, go to constitutionstudy.com/IOTC and you can find out more. You could also, by the way, join the Constitution Study membership. I'm only $5 a month. You get access to a bunch of my digital material, and also you get to join our Slack community where you have better access to me. And we're trying to set up some more Constitution Scholar events. I've been trying to set up some online events, but really haven't gotten a lot of traction with that. So there's that information going on. I'm still working hard to get to keep putting this information out, to keep putting out these videos, putting out these live streams. I know it's going to be difficult for the next few weeks because I can't do Facebook. Facebook won't let me comment. They won't even let me use Messenger. So it is what it is. Facebook has a legal right to do it. I don't like what they do, but they do what they do. Oh, wait a second. I got a question actually through the website. Excellent. Hey, this is the first time someone's actually asked a question through the website. Hang on a second. Let me find that question. I apologize. Like I said, I've been dealing with internet problems for a day and a half. And it's kind of slow and laggy, and it's interesting because it's spotty. Sometimes it works great. Some sites work fine. Other sites, it's having a problem. As I understand it, the part of the problem is on the internet backbone. Come on, show me the comments. Oh, come on. It won't show me the. There we go. Comments. Okay. All right. Let's see. Edda's asking, with so much political clout versus individual choice, just how does the average citizen get a proper electoral system accomplished? Most of the state legislature are above us in elitism. Sad but true. Edda, you're right. I'm not going to blow sunshine up anybody's skirt or kilt or whatever you wear. It's not easy when we're working as an individual, right? The problem with the electors and the problem with the vote counts have similar solutions, at least in my estimation. Right? Now, the first thing is, yes, if you're talking about an individual citizen, the first thing you want to do is you want to get to know your state representative and your state senator. This works a lot better if you talk to them before you complain to them. It's been my experience, most state legislative officials, they only hear from people for one of two reasons, either to complain or to ask for something. So first, if you know your state of your legislators, without having to ask them stuff, they tend to listen to you a bit more, right? That's my opinion. But the next is, what you really want to do is you want to do as much of the work for them as possible. In other words, don't just come in and say, I want to change the elector system. That's why I said I may write up a draft legislation, say, here is a piece of legislation I would like you to consider entering into the process. Right? I want you to sponsor this legislation, and then maybe have a little white paper as to why. And I've thought about it. Tell me if it's something that you would actually use if I were to write up such a draft legislation, a little cover letter as to why it's important. But don't expect them to write it for you. You have to go as prepared as possible. Again, they're getting asked for help from dozens of places at once. Make it easy on them. Now, here's a better way. That's kind of step one. Step two, we need to get our friends and neighbors involved as well. In other words, it's one thing for us to talk here amongst ourselves where, you're watching the Constitution study, I'm watching the Constitution study. We probably think very similarly. We have similar opinions. That's an echo chamber. What we really want to do is we want to start talking to other people and convince them why that is a better solution. And the reason I say it's a better solution is because those people who are underrepresented, who feel disenfranchised in the presidential election because their vote doesn't stand a snowball's chance of actually meaning anything, there's a way to fix that without breaking the entire system. So you come in and you start talking again, friends, neighbors. I'm speaking at a Second Amendment group next week. I'm actually going to have a table at a gun show that weekend. I just had two interviews. I had an interview with a gentleman out of Nebraska and a lady out of New York City, and float the idea not as this is, we should do this, but this is why we should do this. Again, a person in New York City, they're not really going to care. But a person in upstate New York would say, hey, that's not a half bad idea. Well, gee, isn't that nice? Wouldn't it be nice? Again, I'll put it together if people are interested, saying, here, take this and mail it, or better yet, go to the office of your state representative, your state senator, give them a copy and ask them to sponsor it. Now we start getting more people involved. I'm sorry, there is no quick fix to this mess. It's been decades, but I think that's where we start doing it. Is we need to be able to, we need to prepare to contact our legislators. We need to then talk to other people, convince them that it's worthwhile, and then share our experience with them. I don't know if I've told the story here before, but when I first moved to Tennessee, I reached out to my state rep and my state senator, and I contacted their offices as I want to meet with them. Of course, the first question is why? I'm new here. I want to hear what their big concerns are. I want to understand what are the big issues in Tennessee state legislatures so that I can make an informed decision. I want to come and learn from them. I want to talk with them before I support them. And after a little bit of initial confusion, I ended up having a really great meeting with both the rep and the senator. It actually happened. We all three of us got together. My daughter came along and we discussed things. And it was a great time, not simply because we had a nice talk, but for months afterwards, in fact, for a couple of years afterwards, if I saw something that I was curious about, or I wanted to give them my opinion, I would write them an email and I would get a personal email back, understanding that they had read my email. It's a very helpful process. And I've gotten away from that. I haven't gotten emails back from them, and I really need to get back in touch. But the answer is, if you want this to be a one-hit wonder, if you want to say, here's a solution, walk in and fix it, that's not going to work so well. The next level, all right, so the first is you're prepared to meet with them, you're prepared to share. The next level isn't so much with legislation like this. There's nothing unconstitutional about a winner-take-all elector. But when we start talking about some of the shenanigans in some of these counting places, now's the time to go to them and say, wait a second, you swore or affirmed to support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of your state. What are you doing to fix these problems? These are not new problems. These problems have existed before. What are you doing to fix them? Because if you're not doing anything, you are failing in your oath to support the Constitution of the United States and of your state. And if you're not going to fulfill your oath, then you are disqualified for office, and I have to find someone else to support. I have to find someone else to run against you because you're not doing your job. We hired you to do a job. It's listed right here in the U.S. Constitution, in the state Constitution. If you're not going to do your job, I'm going to have to find somebody who will. I don't think that works for this presidential elector change, but certainly for the counting malfeasance, absolutely. And for other legislative issues. So we learn to present ourselves. We talk to others to help educate them. All right, we're not trying to convince them. We're not trying to sway them. We're trying to educate them. We're trying to help them. We're trying to open their eyes to other possibilities. And we need to do that in a winsome way. And then third, we need to make sure we're holding our elected officials accountable. By the way, Etta, let me know. This is, I think, only the first or second time I've actually live streamed to the website. So I'm curious how it's working. If you leave a comment, that would be wonderful, just to let me know. See if I got any others. I don't have any through YouTube. Do I have any through Zoom? I don't have any through Zoom. Again, here at the Constitution Study, things are going okay. I might as well, while I'm here and I've got some time, and I'll leave time for someone to ask another question. Things are going okay. 2020 has really kicked my butt. I had all sorts of plans for this year to go out to all sorts of different events. I was going to homeschool conferences. I was going to other, some political, some non-political conferences. I was going to go out with my books, and I was going to go out and try and get speaking engagements, and I wanted to engage with people. And that was how I wanted the Constitution Study to kind of go and support itself, because right now it doesn't really support itself. And with all the lockdowns and shutdowns, that hasn't happened. And that why we have lockdown and shutdowns is a whole other thing. But I'll tell you that it's been a very tough year in 2020. 2020 is going to end up costing me a fair amount of money, and that's just the truth of the matter. Now I'm looking for ways to help supplement that income so that I can keep doing this, because I want to keep putting this information out. I want to keep sharing it, and I don't want to have to make it a paywall. I want to be able to give you free information that you can share with others. The easiest way for that to happen, or for the people to support the work that I'm doing, either by donating through the website. By the way, you go to constitutionstudy.com, you click the donate button, or you go to /donate. Anything you donate there gets used to keep the podcast going. It keeps the live streams going. It keeps the podcast going. It keeps me on, Apple Podcasts and Spotify, on YouTube, Facebook, all the software I use to make this happen, to get the live streams to go to multiple locations, to get my videos to broadcast. That's all supported by the website and anything you do there. If you go to the shop, all right, if you click the little shop button, everything you do there supports the work that I'm doing at the Constitution Study. So if you buy a book or you buy a membership, what that does is that helps me. It helps me write new books. It helps me put together new webinars and other programs. The most important thing is it helps me go and speak to other groups. It helps pay for the travel and the expenses of going and speaking to other groups and sharing this message. And by the way, if you want me to come speak to one of your groups, either in person or through the internet, please, I love doing that. I have a great time talking to all different sorts of people all across this country. And every time I've done it, people think that, people come back and they've enjoyed it. They said they've had a great time. If you want, let's get it set up. If you're interested, if I'm going to be in your area, again, on the website, there's a calendar. You go to the events tab, or you look at the list on the front page, you'll see every event I am going to. If I'm going to be in your area, I'd love to meet you. I'd love to meet your groups. I'd love to be engaged. That's the struggle I've been having in 2020, is my plans to turn this from a hobby into something I can continue to do full time really took a kick in the shins. If you can help, that would be great. Even if you can't help monetarily, believe it or not, when people sign up for the newsletter, when people comment, I had somebody I've done a couple interviews with, gave me a great pat in the back. He sent me an MP3 of a clip of an interview we did where he introduced me as the foremost authority on the United States Constitution. That helped boost me to continue this work. It isn't all a matter of, of money. I mean, I talk about money because money is important. I had someone send me a comment, blew my socks off. They talked about their husband sued someone in their county government and won the case in large part because he had read the Constitution of the United States. He had studied that. He'd studied the state constitution. He knew what he was talking about. So when he took the county to court, he actually was able to stand his ground and win his case. That to me is amazing. I would love the opportunity to meet that person, shake their hand, congratulate them, because that is what we, the people, are supposed to do. That's why we're supposed to read and study the Constitution. That's the type of stuff that really I find exciting, and I find truly invigorating and truly interesting. So let's see, we're about 7 minutes to the top of the hour. I'm not seeing any new questions. Hang on a second, let me check over here. Yep, I'm not seeing any new questions there. I'm not seeing any new questions there. I'm not seeing any new questions there. So I figured that. I figured today wasn't going to be as active because we don't have Facebook. But here's what I'm going to send you away with one last to do. If you'll do me this favor, right? Everybody that you know on Facebook, anybody that you have seen on these events before on Facebook, remind them that I'm still here. Remind them that they can find me at constitutionstudy.com. They can find me on YouTube, on Parler, on Rumble, on Instagram, on Twitter. Right? I'm still there. And I'm still love talking to people. I still love answering their questions. I still love engaging with them. And I hope you do too. So for the real diehards that toughed it out, that found a way to participate, I am thrilled. By the way, if you want to join the Zoom room, so I have a Zoom room here where not only can you type in your question, you can actually talk to me. So, people in the Zoom room, if they have a question, they have the option to actually talk to me. All you have to do is go to constitutionstudy.com/calendar. You'll see the Facebook live event. Register. It's absolutely free. You'll not only get a reminder email, but you'll get a link to the Zoom room where you can join and we can participate there. So in this craziness of the presidential election, I am not surprised. I kind of predicted this was going to be the situation of things. I want to remind you two things. I want to remind you that the election isn't over yet, so expect more craziness. Don't be shocked. Don't be surprised. Be prepared to answer when people give you information that is just plain wrong. Right. So when someone tells you that Biden's president-elect, or that Trump's going to win because of this, remind them this is how the Constitution says. This is how it works. We need to allow the system to work. And number two, regardless of what happens from now until Inauguration Day, remember, we are supposedly a free constitutional republic. I don't care how bad and hypocritical other people act. We, the people, we the citizens of the United States, should expect better of ourselves. I'm not talking about what I expect of other people. We should expect better of ourselves. We should be the ones that have the answers to the Constitution. We should be the ones that grant the others their rights, their liberties, and their freedoms, because we want that for ourselves. And no matter who wins, I will pretty much guarantee you the state and federal governments will continue to find ways to infringe on our rights. Let us challenge that. Let us be prepared to defend and assert our rights. Let us be prepared to do it using the Constitution and the legitimate laws of this country. Let us not be the ones that resort to violence and rioting and yelling and screaming and whining. I just have this vivid picture in my mind of the day Trump won. There's a picture of some lady just screaming at the top of her lungs because Trump won. Let's not be that way. Now, understand, I've not seen any of that yet, but I want we, the people, everyday Americans, to be better and to recognize no matter what happens next, if we know the Constitution, if we've read it and studied it, we will recognize when our rights are violated, and we will be the ones who are prepared when they come, when it's time to defend our rights, when it's time to assert our rights. We will be the ones who are prepared. So continue to be prepared, continue to stand your ground, and hopefully you'll stand with me because you found this valuable. And I hope I'll see you again the next time on the Constitution Study. Thank you again, everyone.